Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about the last region of the original 13 colonies, which is of course the southern colonies. So the southern colonies are made up of Virginia, Maryland, the Carolinas, and Georgia. And we're going to talk about all of those today. So our essential question, just the question I want you to keep in mind throughout today's lesson, is why is it important that we learn about the colonies? We've been talking about them. This is the third day, and why is it important that we learn about them? I mean, this was 300, 400 years ago. So I want you to be kind of just keeping that in the back of your head while we're talking today about the southern colonies. So the first one we're going to talk about is Virginia. If you haven't watched the Jamestown video yet, go ahead and watch that back and then come back to this. So I posted that link. So Jamestown was England's first permanent settlement in the New World. They landed in America in April 1607. So if you, again, haven't watched the video, go watch that, and that will tell you a little bit more about Jamestown. So at first, the settlers of Jamestown were more concerned with finding gold than establishing a good foundation for their colony. So the reason many of them came here was they wanted the economic advantage of finding gold, and they've heard there's gold here. So they were so caught up in that gold rush, so to say, that they weren't really farming or building shelters or just kind of getting their settlement together first. They kind of just rushed right into finding gold. So their leader, John Smith, established a rule: no work equals no food. So essentially, if you're not working to make the colony better, you won't get food. And so as harsh as that was, it ended up totally turning Jamestown around for the better, and they kind of got it together in that way. So they began farming tobacco, which brought more economic success. And so then people in Europe hear about this, and they're like, well, everyone in Jamestown seems to be doing really well. So more and more settlers come from Europe to Jamestown. As the colony expanded, they had more and more conflicts with the Native Americans. So why do you think that is? Picture this in your mind. There's one small settlement, and there's Native American tribes all around. As it gets bigger and bigger, they're expanding into those tribes, which is obviously going to cause conflict. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that tomorrow when we learn about the Native American perspective. But I just want to kind of plant that seed in your mind of like, why is there conflict? Like the settlers think they have the right to the land, but so do the Native Americans. So just like think about that for now, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. All right, the next colony we're going to talk about is Maryland. So Maryland was founded, a man named Lord Baltimore wanted to establish a colony as a safe haven for Catholics. So what does this remind you of? Remember when we talked about William Penn founding Pennsylvania, he founded it as a safe haven for Quakers. So this is essentially the same thing, but Lord Baltimore wants to do it for Catholics. So he dies, but his son, who's also named Lord Baltimore, that's not confusing at all, carries out his father's plan. And Maryland becomes a really popular place to settle because there's rich farmland, and there's also that religious tolerance, which is really attractive to people, especially people who are living in England who you have to be Anglican. So if there's anyone from other religions, they can see this as kind of a safe haven for them. So Maryland, they passed the Act of Toleration, which is a written document ensuring religious freedom by law. So this should ring a bell. That's something that we still have in the United States today. There's a written law saying that we should be able to practice freedom of religion. So this kind of was a cornerstone for that, and like a foundation for what we still live by in the United States today. Next one we're going to talk about is the Carolinas. So as we know that today we have North and South Carolina. So how did that happen? So it begins as one colony, but it eventually splits into North and South Carolina. The reason for that was it was two very different groups moving in, and they were moving into two different sections. So it was kind of an easy split. So in the north, they were farmers with small farms growing tobacco, and in the south, they were large plantations, which was one of our keywords for today. So a plantation is a much, much, much larger farm, and so it's just kind of two different lifestyles. Because they were so different and they were already in the north and the south, it was just split right down the middle, and we have North and South Carolina. So another main effect we're going to see that comes out of the Carolinas is because the South had large plantations, they needed a large workforce to work on those plantations. So they began to turn to slavery as a source of labor. And then again, we're going to get more into that tomorrow when we look at it from other perspectives. So just remember that that was the main effect. The next colony we're going to talk about is Georgia. So Georgia was founded by a man named James Oglethorpe. He wanted to solve a problem created by the English debt law. So what the English debt law said was that people who owe money can be put in jail until the debt gets repaid. So let's just think about that for a second. You owe a debt to a person and you get put in jail. While you're in jail, you can't work to make money to pay them their debt. So it doesn't really make sense. It kind of works out like a circle where people end up getting put in jail and they can never get out because they can never pay their debt. So Oglethorpe kind of realized this, and he wants to give debtors a chance to work off their debt. So he wants to create a colony just for them where they can come across the sea and begin to work to pay their debts. So that's why he founded Georgia. Another main reason for Georgia was that Spanish Florida was right below them. So Florida was owned by Spain. And so if Spain ever wanted to take over the 13 colonies or invade, Georgia serves as kind of a buffer wall for that. So that was one of the other main reasons for Georgia. So back to our essential question. Why is it important that we learn about the colonies? If we were together right now, I would have you talk amongst each other and come up with ideas. There's so many right answers to this question. A couple that I came up with was just to connect our communities. So to connect the colonies not only to each other, but also to our world today. I see a lot of foundations that were laid by the colonies that are things that we have implemented in today's United States, and so that's something that's really important, is that we're making connections between the two, and we can learn about a lot about our community by learning about their community. Another one I came up with was to learn about part of our country's foundation. These were the first states. So obviously, if we want to know our country's history, we have to start at the beginning of the states and kind of go from there and learn how we came to be the United States. So that was a couple that I came up with. I'm sure you can come up with a lot of your own, and we're actually going to kind of work with that in our activity for today. All right, I'll miss you guys. See you later.